There we go. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining Capalino's Future of New York series, focused on major issues facing New York. We're excited to have you all join us today. I'm Susan Hinkson-Carling, and I lead the real estate group here at Capalino, the leading urban strategy firm in New York. Our team works very hard to ensure our clients achieve sustainable success in New York and its region with expertise in finance, real estate, and social impact, procurement, and strategic planning. I will be moderating today's discussion centered on workforce development and training in infrastructure sectors in the US and particularly in New York. In deference to our guests' extremely demanding schedules, we know we're holding this event on Yom Kippur. As always, this webinar will be recorded and we will share it afterwards on a multitude of platforms, so anyone observing the holiday can watch at their convenience. This webinar should be about an hour, and the panelists and I will have about a 45-minute discussion, and we'll save the last 15 minutes for questions from the audience. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. I'm very excited to have with us today a very distinguished panel. And in no particular order in the Brady Bunch squares that is on my screen. First, the president of City College is with us, Vincent Boudreau. President Boudreau was appointed president of the City College of New York in 2017. He is a specialist in the politics of social movements in Southeast Asia. President Boudreau also conducts research about government transitions to democracy, collective violence, and the relationship between civil society, social movements, and the democratization process in Indonesia and the Philippines. Allow me to add that it is the City College of New York's 175th birthday, and it has recently launched the Charles B. Rangel Infrastructure Workforce Initiative to create a pipeline of skilled workers for the rapidly evolving urban landscape. The curricula includes analytical and operational skills, simulation-based training, the experiential learning components, and the initiative prioritizes underrepresented communities in jobs spanning transportation, energy, buildings, water, food, waste, and the digital infrastructure world. Thank you for being here. We also have with us the Honorable Adriano Espaillat. He represents the New York's 13th Congressional District. Representative Espaillat is the first Dominican American to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives. I have a grandparent who is Dominican, so it's exciting. The first elected to Congress in 2016, Representative Espaillat serves as a member of the influential U.S. House Committee on Appropriations and responsible for funding the federal government's vital activities. Additionally, do I hear someone talking? Additionally, Representative Espaillat serves on the House Budget Committee, and he has worked to pass innumerable bills, including legislation to invest in our nation's infrastructure and support policies for job creation and economic growth. Thank you for being here. Carlo Scissura, he is president and CEO of the New York Building Congress, a position he has held since 2017. The New York Building Congress is a broad-based membership organization committed to providing growth and success in the construction industry in New York. The organization, which includes members from across a wide variety of the building community, provides a unique forum to advance an industry-wide agenda focusing on economic and infrastructure investment, job creation, and professional exchange. I will add that we were hoping and expecting Congressman Charles Rangel to join us today. I think he might be having some technical difficulties, and hopefully we can overcome that and he will join in the panel when he gets here. So thank you, gentlemen, for being with us today. Let me just start our conversation off a little bit with some context for the audience. 2021, we got past the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, $550 billion of investment in redevelopment and renewal of infrastructure across the US. The infrastructure industries that I think are probably at the top of all of our lists: construction and building services, certainly energy, public transportation, trucking, food production, processing, distribution, water and wastewater, and especially environmental remediation. So the infrastructure sector, clearly, I think we've been reporting that there are severe shortages in the infrastructure sector in terms of workforce. Just a couple of data points before we dive into some questions. According to a 2023 survey conducted by Transportation for America, which is a national transportation advocacy group, almost 89% of transportation agencies in the nation are experiencing workforce shortages since the pandemic began. Some agencies are cutting back services due to a lack of vital operational workers. NBC sort of has come out with news that due to workforce shortages, some cities and localities are turning to alternative untapped talent pools. And I think we'll probably get into a little bit of that today. Those folks who have previously experienced some barriers of entry into the labor market, non-degree programs that give people enough expertise to be able to get into some of these industries. And according to the Associated Builders and Contractors group, we're looking at a shortage of 546,000 construction jobs in the country, which is an enormous task, perhaps, to fill. So clearly we've got some need. And in deference to Congressman Espaillat's very limited time with us, I'd like to maybe start off with him. Please, Congressman, give us your thoughts on the workforce in the US and what we're facing, and on the national level, but also try to bring it sort of home into New York City. And please tell us a little bit about your involvement with CCNY and the Rangel and Infrastructure Workforce Initiative, and just get some thoughts on broader context.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you all for being here today this morning to have this important discussion. As you all may have read or seen, we have witnessed some of the lowest unemployment rates in the last 60 or so years, 3.3, 3.4 unemployment rate, which is very low. However, we still have the room for additional employment. And one of the arguments that I make is on behalf of migrants is give them the work permit, bring them in. And they want to work, they want to go into the job market that many of us have decided that we want to compete for. So that may be the shot in the arm that the economy needs to continue to move forward and impact favorably the high inflation rates. So the Second Avenue subway, it's a perfect example of how we can move forward. Second Avenue subway goes through East Harlem from 96th Street to 125th Street. It's roughly a $7 billion project. Over 70% of the tunnel work is already done, going up to 120th Street. We have the commitment from the state, and we're working on the final funding agreement. Right now, it's past the engineering stage, and we're hopeful that by the end of the year, we'll be able to have a full funding agreement. That will not only address the overcrowding in the most overcrowded subway line in the city and country, perhaps, which is the Lexington Avenue line, but it would also transport close to 150,000 people a day, making it one of the busiest subway routes in the city and country, right through a transportation desert, one of the biggest transportation deserts in the country, which is East Harlem. I am of the opinion that that will transform East Harlem, and it will connect Harlem to the rest of the world. In fact, there is an effort called Uptown Grand Central. It will connect to Metro North and all the destinations, both in New York and Connecticut, that Metro North connects to. It will connect via express bus service to LaGuardia Airport and to future water transportation, both on the Hudson and the Harlem River. So this is really a regional hub that we're trying to build, which will have its main connector right on 125th Street. So in many ways, it will revolutionize Harlem and Northern Manhattan and connect it to the rest of the world. But the most exciting part of it is that it's also a great employment opportunity. And having said that, the Rangel Center plays a pivotal role at City College in training our young people and others for those jobs that will be produced by this project. And we already know which they are, which jobs they are, because we have the template from the first phase of the Second Avenue subway, which went from 96th Street down through the Silk-Stockton. So we'll be able to work with labor and the building Congress and the building trades to train some of our young people and others, making sure that this is not just a transportation project, but also one that will produce hundreds of jobs for our community. And I'm very excited about that prospect. We're almost there. We're getting very close to that groundbreaking, and I look forward to everyone being a part of this.
Thank you. It's incredibly important to also to provide sort of a workforce that is perhaps sort of indigenous to the area as well, right? And I think we'll probably talk a little bit about how the center and just in general, the concept of being able to reach out to underserved communities. We have been joined by Congressman Rangel. Welcome. And while he gets settled and is connecting to audio, can you hear us?
Me? Now I can. Wow.
Brilliant. Hello.
Hi, Susan. Fortunately, I've heard most everything, and I had to get
Fantastic.
the new link when my colleague Adriano was talking. But and just let me say this: I'm a carekeeper. My wife has a little problem, and she was up all night, and so I may have to leave. I don't think so, but I don't know whether it's my time to speak, but I'm taking it because I'm the oldest with all of you put together to share my enthusiasm, my excitement, and just to say that I knew in the Congress that one day infrastructure had to come up. I looked at it as a national security issue. I looked at it as a problem of the difference in lifestyles for all Americans. And in my heart, I did these 46 years saying, I don't want this train to come through my community and we don't get a chance to get on it. And I could not think of a better team than that's on this panel. My only problem is that the problem is so big and so exciting with so many possibilities that I don't know. I think we have to run fast to catch up. But my wife wouldn't believe that that's my story, and I'm ending it this quickly. But when I see the backgrounds of the people that are here, there's nothing for me to say except we can do it, and I'm excited about the possibility. So thank all of you for your indulgence, and I'm listening.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to see that you were able to get onto the panel. I know that be a fabulous contributor. So speaking to the issue of providing maybe specific types of workers for specific types of jobs, let me ask Carlo from the Building Congress, from your point of view, from sort of a construction standpoint in New York, what are some of the jobs that you are seeing that are not being filled, that don't have kind of a pipeline? And do you anticipate that pipeline is going to be able to get filled shortly, or are you seeing sort of a longer arc of time to be able to fill a lot of these jobs?
Thank you, Susan. And let me just start by saying it's a pleasure to be on with Congressmember Espaillat and Dr. Boudreau, but it's truly an honor to see Charlie Rangel this morning. Congressman, I told a quick story, and I'm going to indulge the audience of my first official meeting with you was in Coney Island many moons ago when Marty Markowitz had Aretha Franklin as his guest, and you came on stage and helped Marty introduce Aretha to 15,000 adoring fans. And I could tell you that while 15,000 people had their eyes on Aretha Franklin, and I hope your wife doesn't hear this, Congressman, Aretha Franklin had her eyes only on Charlie Rangel. So it was a magical evening in Coney Island, and I know you had a great time that time.
And I remember it so well. And
it
Carlo,
was a great
so
night,
glad.
great night.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. Just one more point that Charlie Rangel made, and I think it's to me the greatest story of the Second Avenue subway, which is the train is not only going to stop in Harlem and up in northern Manhattan, but it's going to be a catalyst for such a long overdue recognition that that part of New York is not only worthy and has merit to have this grand new subway, but should have a version of Grand Central and a hub of activity that connects people and jobs and schools and culture and community and everything. And that focuses on the people who have lived there their whole lives, who now can finally have access to the entire region just by a couple of subway stops. And I think I've heard my friend Congressman Espaillat say it many times. Building a Second Avenue subway is not just shovels in the ground and a couple of subway stations. It's actually rebuilding entire communities and giving them the access. And I think when we talk about infrastructure, it's about access, it's about people, it's about creating communities and workforce. And Susan, I will get to your question now, and apologies for the long-winded road to get there. But, you know, I know Congressman Espaillat and some of his colleagues were very clear when they talked about the infrastructure bill to everyone, both elected officials, colleagues, and folks like me in the industry. It was not just about rebuilding roads and creating pipelines and subways and et cetera, but it was about creating very good jobs with benefits and for residents in the communities. And I think we learned in the first phase of Second Avenue that the folks are willing to work. And what I think we have understood since then, and you know, we have to be mindful that think about the number of years that we did not continue to build. So we opened up 3 stops on the Upper East Side. And in our vision, in our industry, while we were constructing and the men and women were underground building phase 1, the architects and the engineers should have been immediately working on phase 2. Because for the workforce, if you finish on Friday and you're done with phase 1, imagine if those women and men on Monday could actually start working on phase two. And the day they start working on phase two, imagine if the women and men in the engineering studios and architecture studios could be working on phase three. And that's how you keep people working. And doing that, you're training, you're helping young people get into the workforce, you're helping migrants and immigrants get into the workforce, you're helping folks who were previously incarcerated get into the workforce. It is an industry that has traditionally fed the folks who are coming to America, the folks who are building up their careers. The building industry has never been one of saying, well, we don't want you because you're an immigrant, or we don't want you because this. These are the people that build our futures. So the Infrastructure Act, and I will say this to Congressman Espaillat, Second Avenue Subway and this Infrastructure Jobs Act would not have happened without his very clear messaging, endurance, and speaking up on this, because it's too critical. It's the people on this panel, the folks watching us, will never see another $1.5 trillion infrastructure investment in our lifetimes. Maybe my 8-year-old daughter will, and I'm not even convinced that she will. So this is our moment to put people to work, create jobs, help local individuals get the jobs. And I think most importantly is help right some of the wrongs of the past. Infrastructure was not always kind to communities. And we are living 50, 60, 70 years later, witnessing what infrastructure has done. So in many ways, it has changed people's lives. It's created opportunities, but in many ways, it's cut knives through people's communities. And I think as we're building today, we are mindful that our workers are building a system for them, for the people, for the future. And I think we have to invest. So the Infrastructure Act had some great investments in workforce training for construction, but it had none for engineering. And if you talk to some of our members, the building trades will say, we're ready. And Gary LaBarbera and his team are phenomenal, and they are ready to put women and men to work. There's more training to do, there's more outreach to do, but it will come, at least in New York. Engineers are having a struggle. We are lacking an American educational system where we're training engineers, where we're getting architects, where we're getting a diversity in the engineering and the architectural community. So that is something that together we have to look at. It is something where comprehensive immigration reform would be very helpful. Oftentimes students, and Dr. Boudreau, I'm sure you see this, will come to this country, will study, will become great successes in their education, and then they leave because they can't work here. So we have to really relook at how we're doing work permits and opportunities. And there is just, young people in the city of New York who don't have architects in their families, don't have engineers, and yet they could sit on a piece of paper on a computer and create the most incredible drawings. And it is all of our jobs to say to them, folks, you could be making well over $100,000 a year doing what your passion is and building these incredible things that you see and that you use. So I would say workforce is the #1 issue. Training is the #1 issue, but really getting into the communities and focusing on young people who may not have families, parents, grandparents in our industry to understand that, hey, you see what they're doing on Second Avenue Subway when you gotta cross the street 5 times to get to school? Someday you could be working on that project because it's going to go another 20, 30 years. And you could be making a lot of money in your community, living in your community, working in your community, and building your lives here. So it's
That
only
makes
going to happen if
so
we
much
do it
sense.
together, Susan.
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually just wanted to circle back to the congressman and either Congressman Espaillat or Congressman Rangel. Carlo brings up a very good point about reaching out to, underserved communities, that especially communities in which there are not perhaps mentors or examples of the kind of job and the kind of person to fill a particular kind, sort of job, like being an engineer, or even being able to do the CAD drawings, right? Computer aided drawings. In your experience, what do you see that we need to do to reach out to that community, to be able to broaden that workforce, and to be able to serve those folks on an equity basis, to be able to fill these jobs that are so needed? Maybe Congressman Espaillat, I don't know if you have some.
Well, I think that the Rangel Center in City College is a perfect example of what we can do. I think through the vision of Congressman Charles D. Rangel, we're trying to establish not just a local initiative, but I would dare to say a national initiative. And as he said, infrastructure is not just transportation and infrastructure, it is homeland security too. And so to train, for example, the first phase of Second Avenue, so it went right through the silk stocking district, where you have some of the richest zip codes in the country. So maybe employment there wasn't as a priority because people were making pretty good money there as it is right now. But now you're going through East Harlem, and employment, the success of this project is not just about 3 subway stops. It's about how many jobs we create to lift the community up, and how many of those jobs are local. And so we are relying on our friends in the labor community, and of course, Building Congress and others, to ensure that that happens through the Rangel Center. And we're very happy that the Rangel Center has gotten funding already, not just from Washington, federal funding, but also the governor has been fully behind it. And we hope that it becomes a model for the rest of the country. Congressman Rangel?
I am telling you, you have been a true partner in understanding a lot of what we bring to the Congress. Is that when I started the Congressional Black Caucus, there were 13 members. Now there are 58 members that I don't have to lobby, that have the same type of problems in their communities and the same vision for an America that treats all people with the same opportunity. How many have the Hispanic caucus reached now, Adriano? I can't hear you.
42 members, 42 members.
Can you imagine having that many lobbyists on the floor of the House of Representatives? And our dreams for a better America. And so, like Adriano said, you cannot put a cap on the needs that we're going to have, because when you say infrastructure, there's hardly a modality that can escape the fact that we need help in so many different areas. So to find someone that succeeded me in the Congress that understood as well or better than I did what we have to do as members was a blessing to me. Absolutely.
So let's get some words from President Boudreau, who oversees the Rangel Center and has, I'm sure, a great deal to say about workforce and training workforce and serving underserved communities and understanding the big picture, but also has his thumb on sort of the micro issues in New York. So would love to bring you in on this conversation, and again, welcome for being here.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. You mentioned that we just passed a significant birthday in City College. our entire brand over the course of those decades has been to unlock the potential of people who maybe didn't have a clear path into college education. And so we have 11 Nobel Prize graduates who almost to a person would say, if it weren't for City College, I wouldn't have had an education. I would have been working with my hands or doing some all honorable professions. But this makes this specific initiative really a natural for us. You know, I'll admit, before I had my conversation with Congressman Rangel early on in my presidency, we were really concentrating on people receiving baccalaureate degrees and masters and PhDs from the college. And you know, Carlo talked about the need for architects and engineers. We have the only public engineering degree program in New York City. We have the only public architecture school in New York City. And that means that young people could get an engineering degree at City College paying $7,000 a year in tuition, which is unheard of given what you can do with that degree. But Congressman Rangel came into my office and you know, again, talked about, before the infrastructure bill was passed, that this was coming down the pike, and people in his community, people that had been historically underrepresented in infrastructure industry, needed to be positioned for that. And so we really started a conversation about what it would look like to do a kind of non-degree institute that focused on developing the skills in infrastructure. And so, as I said, it was a little bit new for City College. We hadn't really devoted a lot of activity or energy to non-degree certificate-based trainings. But then here we are with a transportation institute, an energy institute, a civil engineering program, and to think about what it would look like if the expertise represented in those degree granting programs were deployed to identify, you know, non-degree programs that were essential in building infrastructure. And so that's what really started the Rangel program at City College. It was an effort for us to deploy our expertise and technology more broadly, to continue our historic mission to make sure that underrepresented folks in education, but also in industry, had a path to broader participation. And then to make sure that we didn't miss this historic opportunity that everyone on the panel has alluded to, that this is historic investment in infrastructure. And so we started the program really thinking about a core curriculum that would start with an orientation program around infrastructure, you know, recognizing, as Carlo said, a lot of the people that we were targeting had no sense of what the scope of employment opportunities in infrastructure might be, going from, you know, distributed energy to waste management to transportation, communication, all of these sorts of things, and then moving from there into a flexible curriculum that would allow students to focus on one or another field of endeavor. So this was the plan, and in fact, the very first cohort that we brought in to do that baseline training, this is over a year ago, all came from ACS. These were all kids coming out of the foster care system. And so this was another aspect of our model, which is you're probably not going to just open the doors and ask individuals to walk through and get training. You're going to work with the social and religious and government institutions that could identify a group of young men or women, or maybe people that weren't so young, who needed training and could help us bring people in numbers. So ACS, groups like HCCI, the Harlem Congregations for Community Investment, we work with them, the historic churches in Upper Manhattan, we're moving now into, you know, prison system and returning veterans. All of these kind of networks are able to identify and provide for us people who have the capacity to do really, really great work, but maybe don't have an entree into this training. So as I said, this was the original model. But one of the things that we recognized early on is that if you were laying out a 6 or 8 month training program before somebody had an opportunity to get a job, you would lose people from the kind of populations we were interested in extending opportunities to. And so we've been layering on special courses, some of which are only 2 weeks long, for which there is immediate employment opportunities following that. And so the idea is, if we can present the curriculum in modules that scaffold into increasing levels of expertise, you can get somebody who maybe doesn't have a job today, a job in the short term, and then carve out a path for that person over the next year or two to increasingly sophisticated areas of work. So just as an example, we started earlier this year doing a commercial drone training. So flying drones, apart from what people do recreationally, these are increasingly being used for surveying, for mapping, for project management, for testing the strength of existing infrastructure. A student can come into our 2-week drone training program and immediately find employment in that industry. We're really excited. In the last week, we became the first New York center to be able to do Autodesk trainings. That includes AutoCAD, all of this computer-assisted design training, which is essential these days for advanced infrastructure. And that's a skill that can really take people very far in the industry.
You work with, I didn't mean to interrupt, but do you work also with companies and maybe some city agencies to either place folks or have them, in a sense, be employed by a firm, shall we say, or a company, and you do the training while they're employed by that company, and so therefore, getting the person, as you said, kind of into a job, but even a job that that will last and not necessarily be that temporary. But are you working with networks of companies that are looking for people, and you offer the training to get them into a particular job as well?
So the answer is yes, and I'll tell you 2 stories related to that. But particularly for those of the people listening, this is really our area of growth now, is identifying companies that have identifiable workforce needs that we can respond to. And we will work with companies, the bigger the better, because that's the biggest impact on workforce, to develop these programs. But to my 2 stories, the first of them is over a year ago, we started having conversations with the Department of Transportation's Division of Bridges to figure out what they needed to be able to use the infrastructure money that was coming in to shore up the bridge infrastructure. And what they said is they didn't have enough people using AutoCAD. And so we set about what was really a 1-year program to receive designation as an Autodesk training facility. So this new capacity we have to train people on AutoCAD is a direct response to the Bridges Division saying we don't have the skills for that. But the other one, and Congressman Espaillat talked a lot about the Second Avenue subway. We're in a 1-year conversation with them where they are listing all of the areas of workforce that they are having trouble filling. And so some of them are represented. We have now a new hazardous waste operations and emergency response training to help clear brownfields, and that's going to be important for development in the Second Avenue subway. But they're coming to us with lists of jobs that they need training in, and we're developing that training. So this is in addition to what I think is the long-term plan to develop a kind of a set curriculum. But we're very, very eager, especially as this infrastructure money starts to flow now, to make sure that we don't miss a minute in making sure we're providing skilled workers for these jobs.
Exactly. I think we're going to place into the chat, if it isn't there already, we'll place into the chat the website for the Rangel Center so people can get more information. And I'm sure your website tells folks who to talk to and how to be involved. And I'm also sure that folks who want to be able to help would be able to contact you as well, not necessarily looking to train for something, but perhaps would be amenable to opening their company, to being a strategic partner with you, which I think is enormously important.
And I would just add, Dr. Boudreau, I'm sorry if you see me texting on my phone, but I'm texting with one of my VPs who's watching. And
Keep texting, Carlo. Keep
yes,
texting.
we'll be reaching out to you because we've got some ideas on how to work with the Rangel Center and with all of you.
Wonderful.
Oh, excellent.
So you'll
Excellent.
be hearing from us.
See, that's what we do at Capalino. We make
Love it.
marriages, and typically they're long-lasting marriages. So this is a good thing. I just also want to circle back to Congressman Rangel, if he has any things he'd like to talk about, and we have a few minutes before we open it up to questions from the audience. So, Congressman,
Can you hear me?
yes,
Can you hear me? Oh, good.
absolutely.
I really did not know what the this was going to end up with. I had already thought that we had married Capalino, and that you I really did, because I wanted to get the best with City College, the best in the Congress, the best with what I think our country deserves. And I go so decades with Jim, and I just figured that even in the lobby and trade, they would like to leave a footprint and says, you know, I not only lobbied for that, I helped to start it. And so what you are beginning to do here is to show what we need, what we have to do. And there was a program that used to be on TV called Curb My Enthusiasm. And I'm trying desperately hard to do that, but I'm excited about this step. I cannot thank City College and enough for being there as they were for decades, for people that needed the help, that didn't know how to open that door. And Carlo, to see someone like you there in construction is another blessing. I read your background, and I've been dealing with your group for many years, and I can't thank my blessings. And so this is really the group that can do it. And all I can say is that I couldn't ask for more for a wonderful start. And again, Espaillat has, I don't know what happens. I'm 93 now, but I appreciate the youth that he brings and the excitement he brings to the next decades to make our country truly great. Thank you, Susan, for bringing us together, and I look forward to just curbing my enthusiasm.
It's a wonderful show. I watch it all the time. So we've got some questions coming into the chat, and this is an excellent question. I won't give last names, but Maria asks, I'm an old person, but I would like to be involved in those kinds of programs. So is there an age limit to people's expertise to be able to be part of the Rangel initiative?
Oh, I don't think there should be any kind of an age limit. I think anyone who is interested in working in infrastructure. I mean, as I said, one of the things that we've prioritized is identifying a portfolio of classes that range from something that would take you through a career that maybe you're just starting, and maybe even bring you eventually into our engineering school to get an engineering degree, all the way to something where if somebody wants to do a 4-week program with our environmental, we're doing some green technology work, and there's lots of jobs to retrofit buildings to make them more energy conscious. Someone with 4 to 6 weeks of training would be eligible for work in that field. And then, of course, you could get deeper into it as you go. So we've really prioritized trying to make people job ready in the smallest amount of time, and then provide a path for deepening skill and progress through what would be a really rewarding career.
Oh, that's wonderful. And me being an old person am very, very happy to hear that. Oh, and Carlo, you have put into the chat
Yes, so
the
we
Building
wanted to
Congress.
yes, we wanted to make sure everyone had our most recent workforce snapshot report that just talks a little bit about where we are as an industry, who's working, where we are lacking, where we have some kind of holes, and a little bit about where employment is in New York City and state for the workforce. So I hope you'll all read it and send us your comments or ideas on it.
No, really appreciate that. And just to maybe do a little commercial for the Building Congress, the reports that you folks put out are not only interesting to read, but just jam-packed with really good information, really good data, an analysis, and an understanding of the industry. We use it at Capalino a lot. Everything you put out, we read.
They're important. And by the way, for the panelists and listeners, if you don't get them, just sign up on our website and you'll be added to the list. But we have our big report coming out October 19th, which will talk about our 2-year projections on spending and where we think jobs are and numbers are. So stay tuned for that big report.
Oh, fantastic. Before I get to the next question, I just wanted to tell the audience that Representative Espaillat had to leave. As you know, the country is working on the budget, and there's a lot of back and forth, and he is deeply embedded in that, and hopefully we won't have a government shutdown, but he had to go back to work. But
and I would just say, sorry, I meant October 18th for our report.
Oh, okay, great.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So now this is something interesting. So Thomas from Carver Bank. I know Thomas from Carver Bank. This is a terrific person and a great contact. So he writes, Carver Bank's headquarters is literally on top of the new 125th Street station at Park Avenue. We are part of the nice NYS EDC contractor financing program and are applying for New York State Green Bank and US EPA greenhouse gas reduction funding and financing. How can we help to support this existing new project? So I think we just made another marriage here.
I think we made another marriage. That's wonderful. Thomas, we have a new curriculum that we're doing in partnership with Urban Green, and this is a curriculum for building maintenance professionals. So all the way from superintendents to people who are in building maintenance. That's all about both construction and maintenance and management in a way that is more green. And in some ways, one of the needs we need to scale up is the provision of scholarships to people who would want to come in and take these programs. So what I think, we can talk offline about this, but if one of the things you would be looking to do is writing into a grant some objects of funding, one of them would be a great one would be the provision of funding to pay for the training of existing building professionals to try to green the way they're operating their buildings. We've got the program in development. I think we'll be launching it later in the fall, but we can talk about other. I don't know exactly what the particulars of your grant situation is, but would love to partner with you on it. And we have an existing, as you know, very fruitful relationship with Carver Bank, and this would just be another aspect of that.
Fantastic, and we can connect you two up. So
Great.
That's fantastic. We have a student question. Let's see. I hope I pronounce your name right, Tarendra. If someone wants to continue after a 2-week program, what are the options and how does she find out that information?
So come to the center, and one of the things that's an important aspect of the center is really making sure that some of our trainers talk to you about what your career objectives are, and how to finance it, how to manage the relationship between working and studying. I mentioned the 2-week training only as an example of how on the short end we can get a student into the workforce as quickly as possible. But really, the program is designed as a scaffolded program where you would link together 4-week, 6-week, 2-month training programs along a career trajectory that would make you an increasingly skilled member of the infrastructure profession. So the modal way that you would engage this program is to link a 2-week program to other ones. But the best way to figure out what's going to work for you is to come in and talk to one of our advisors at the Rangel Center.
Wonderful. Okay, so we have a question from Alicia. She says, good morning. How is the Rangel Center using their platform to engage with potential candidates? Also, how are you looking at diversifying, I think she means infrastructure-based jobs that are maybe typically male, with women?
Oh, I think we need in this day and age to have as broad a definition of diversity as possible. I think one of the crying needs, and you've heard it from the panelists, is that infrastructure projects are taking place in neighborhoods where the neighborhood isn't supplying the workers, and so we think a lot about race, we think a lot about gender. But we also think about anyone who's shut out of we think about geography as well. We would like people working on infrastructure projects to come from the communities that those projects exist in. But we're really talking about bringing jobs to people who are out of the workforce, and that if you concentrate on that demographic, you tend to hit underrepresented categories across all these different kinds of categories. I guess I don't know what we mean with engaging with potential candidates. If we're talking about candidates for training, then as I said, we're doing 2 things. And one is you can apply directly through the website, and that's one way to do it. And we have social media as well. But we're also trying to reach out to organizations in the communities that would be able to provide groups of people. Sometimes when you recruit a group of people to study, you get a kind of pre-existing network of support and solidarity, and that's a really big issue when you're talking about workforce training. It's sometimes difficult you bring in a cohort of 20 people, and 6 weeks later you've got 9 or 10 left. And so recruiting, for instance, from a church congregation or from an organization allows the folks to sort of hang together and support one another when maybe it seems a little bit tough sometimes.
And I would just add that, and you'll see the numbers in the report we put in the chat box. The construction workforce has really done a great job at diversifying in terms of Black and Latino. Where it has really fallen short is women. And the women in construction has remained stagnant at best over the last several years. Part of it was COVID and shutdowns, but a big part of it is childcare. Construction sites are not a 9-to-5 job, as we know. These folks are there 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Sometimes the people in construction don't live near the projects in Lower Manhattan or Midtown or where some of these big infrastructure projects are. So you're talking about construction workers leaving their homes at 4 or 5 a.m. If you have little kids and you're a single mom, almost impossible, right? So I think one of the things as an industry we have to look at and really focus on is not just increasing the share of women in the workplace in construction, but how are we going to get there, and what are the obstacles and the barriers that we have to help break?
Great point.
It is a great point. I think in some areas of the world, they have sort of figured that out in a way that has not made it here to the States. I've been to a few countries in which a construction company may have what is typically known as a creche, right? So that a female worker with a young person, can bring a young child, and there's childcare available close to the site that they're working on. So maybe someday we'll be able to get over that hurdle. But you're right, it is difficult. And as someone who started in architecture as a young person, when there weren't that many women in architecture school, nor on a job site, sort of figuring all of that out as a 20-something. It was very interesting. But I think with more women being present in the space, a lot of sort of quote unquote issues disappear because it's something hopefully that you will see more and more of, and it will be normalized. Let me see if I see any additional questions. Let's see, I don't.
Alicia had a follow-up though, Susan, if I could get to it on the cost.
Sure.
So
Oh, yes,
Alicia,
yes, I see.
Alicia, there are fees for all of the programs, but I will say so far not a single student has paid that fee out of their pocket. The way we work is we're constantly trying to write grants for scholarships, so that the fee is important because that's what keeps the program running for us. But we have a whole team working on grants, which is why, for instance, when Carver Bank wrote and asked how they could support us, one of the things I said is, well, scholarships for students participating in the program. What you see on paper is at least to this point wouldn't be anything that you would be charged out of pocket, and we've been very successful in making sure that students in these programs are fully funded.
That is a really fantastic point, because if you want more people into the program, and perhaps as we all may have, issues with having to pay a tuition to get that training, if you can open that up and allow people to be able to get the training without the sort of the stress involved in financing that education, I say all for it. That's amazing. Well, we've got a couple more minutes, so if anyone has anything that they haven't been able to get out and would like to talk about. Yes, sir.
Okay, the foundations, Mr. President, there are so many people that know the problem, they want to contribute to the solving the problem. I would think that the larger foundations should find out what we're doing. Again, I don't want to get overexcited about it, but when I dropped out of high school, I thought I was one of the smartest people in the world. When I came back from Korea, I was one of the most decorated wounded veterans in the world. But when I went to the labor market, killing people was not high on the list of the qualities that they wanted. I know that we got to reach out. I know we're reaching out to the veterans, but I just would want to reach out to the world for the problem solvers, because education, working, feeling pride, building a community is building a nation. And we're in such bad shape. I hate to believe that I'm saying that this is going to resolve all of our problems, but I really say that if education and a dropout can get the key and succeed as I did, believe me, I know anyone can do it, opportunity being there. And so before this ends, I want you to know that I hope we remember this panel, and I hope we all feel as I do that whatever good comes out, that we played some part in this great puzzle that's going to make our nation all that people wanted it to be, and we haven't achieved it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I think we all feel the same. This is an important issue. One, in a conversation I think that we will probably continue later down the line. But I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Carlo Scissura from the Building Congress. Thank you, President Boudreau from CCNY. And a special thanks to Congressman Rangel for your initiative, your presence, and just your incredible drive. And we really appreciate it. And thank you to the audience that has joined us today. Please go to Capalino.com and check out Capalino. And you'll also be able to see other Future of New York webinars that we've done in the past. And you'll see the future schedule as well. And hope to see you again. So again, thanks to everyone. Thank you to the participants.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.